Just a little bit to the east of us, the great motorway from London to Carlisle has been cut. And there to the west of us, the fells, the hills in which the fighting border men hid from their many enemies over their years of fighting. And despite the silence, there's a town here asleep, 1,000 caravans. Nobody moving but the dogs who've spent the night out around the caravans. Those dogs which middle-class countrymen call lurchers, but the gypsies call running dogs. And one of them's heard voices, and now there's smoke from this chimney, and the whole town is about to awake. People are fetching water. On this fairground, which since the 14th century has been the site of the great North of England horse fair, in the days when everybody in the country depended on horses. There were these great horse fairs at intervals throughout the country in the course of the year. Most of them have died. This one has died as far as ordinary people buying horses for their ordinary use is concerned, but the gypsies have kept it going. And they've come from the various jobs into which they've been absorbed, the tarmacking and the car wrecking and the scrapyards and the demolition businesses in which many of them got very prosperous, to meet together now, which is the second Wednesday in June, 1 week after Derby Day. One or two of the caravans are still horse caravans, and there are a few families here who actually arrived behind their horses. But most of them come in the great stylish caravans they now keep at the back of where they live, in order that now and again they can take to the road. And as you can see, they've stuck to the impedimenta of their past. There's one of the famous flat carts, which in the old days carried the gypsies' goods before the days that they were in caravan, and later became a sort of dinghy to the caravan itself. Now they're elaborately painted, stylish symbols. And these are the horses, 9 out of 10 of which have never been in the shafts of a caravan, but they're still the coloured horses that the gypsies love. What some people call skewballs and pieballs, but what country people call coloured horses. And the gypsies love them. And these are the tinker boots, which any young Romany fellow has to have if he's going to feel like a man. The horse fair, of course, has no auctioneers. It's all private dealing, and the horses are run, and the bargaining starts as they watch them. And they're run at a particular crossroads just below the caravan side. Crossroads of the roads that join up across the fells here. And for this day and a couple of days following that the sale will go on, it'll be very difficult for anybody from the outside world to get through. As you saw a minute ago, the police send a fire engine up to park there all day in case of trouble with 500 fires. And the police are there all day trying vainly, because it's their duty, to keep the traffic moving through. They won't do very well at it. And although the horses are the symbol of this place, they're not the real point. The real point is the great meeting, the great feeling of tribalism they get, because this belongs very much to the gypsy past. People think the gypsies wandered everywhere with their caravans, but they didn't. Gypsies had territories, like birds, like robins, and they stuck to their territories. Each in his own district wandered round in a circle, covering the ground that was his, contacting the people in the next territory. And this is true now of those gypsies who are still in caravans. And this is why the old days the gypsies used to say to you they could find any other traveller, which is what they tend to call themselves. They could find any other traveller in England in 10 days if you gave them a chance, because the word was passed from one territory to another, until inquiring for him, until it was discovered where he was. But 3 or 4 times a year, on Derby Day and at Stowe Fair and here at Appleby, they all left their territories and moved across the countryside to get together. It doesn't happen on Derby Day anymore, and Stowe Fair is dying, but Appleby is the place where it still happens. And this, therefore, was the places where families met, the members of their family who'd married into other families and moved into other areas, and this is where the whole thing got together, and this is where all the arguments were settled between families, usually quite violently, and a fair amount of fisticuffs can break out here on occasions. And this is where the marriages were arranged. Talking of the fisticuffs, on this very crossroads up to a year or 2 ago, there used to be a tough gypsy coming from a district near Birmingham, a man in the pugilist, gypsy pugilist, prize-fighting tradition. Many champion boxers have been gypsies, and after the pubs closed at lunchtime, he used to stand on this corner and offer to fight anybody for £500. And he usually had some takers. The last time I saw him, which I think was the year before this particular fair, he didn't have any takers. He stood there, looking very ferocious but rather aged, and nobody took him on. So since then I haven't seen that bit of the tradition perpetuated. Already there's trouble with the traffic, but the bargaining's going on. And the bargaining is what matters as far as the horse is concerned. Some of them actually, who are going back to fairly rich businesses, don't really care if they take the horses back with them. It's terribly important they should buy them, and it's terribly important they should see to buy them against other people. And in the 2 or 3 days that Appleby Fair goes on, I've known one horse bought 2 or 3 times and finally sold back to the man who originally brought it here. But the business of the bargaining has gone on, and the sociality, so that's all that matters. The unmistakable bareback riding style of the traveling people. You can tell that seat on a horse a long way away. By now there's trouble on the outskirts. The traffic is beginning to build up. But as you see, everybody's out of their vans now and everybody's down there. And they're concerned with their own business and with their own relationships, and they won't take any notice of anybody else. And it's very difficult, actually, to do anything about 5,000 people of Roman origin who just decide to ignore everybody else and take over a piece of England for these 3 days, because as far as they're concerned, it's been theirs for these 3 days since the gypsies first came to England.